Hello, I am Madhu Mathur, and today I am going to narrate to you my article titled The Best Friend We All Have But Ignore. This article is available in text on my LinkedIn profile. In the early morning on 12th June 1942, Anne Frank tiptoed into the living room, eagerly looking for what she had been thinking about the whole night: the presents. Today was her 12th birthday. Anne Frank was the younger daughter of Otto Frank and Edith Hollander, a Jewish family living in Holland. They had migrated from Germany in early 1930s to escape Nazi rule. She also had an elder sister, Margot. Among the presents, the first thing she noticed was a diary, a gift from her father. Immediately falling in love with it, on the very same day she wrote, "I hope I will be able to confide everything to you as I have never been able to confide in anyone, and I hope you will be a great source of comfort and support." Reflecting on writing a diary a few weeks later, on 20th June 1942, she wrote, "Writing in a diary is really a strange experience for someone like me. Not only because I've never written anything before, but also because it seems to me that later on, neither I nor anyone else will be interested in the musings of a 13-year-old schoolgirl." At the time, little did she know how an ordinary diary would become her closest friend and eventually turn into one of the most widely read books on the horrors of the Holocaust and the invincibility of the human spirit. That a small diary would eventually make her immortal. Dear Kitty. Confessing she had many friends and even admirers, but not a single true friend, she named the diary as Kitty. From then onwards, all her entries began with "Dear Kitty" or "Dearest Kitty" and ended with "Yours, Anne." Treating the diary as a friend, she told Kitty on 20 June 1942 about living in Holland under German occupation in the early 1940s. She told Kitty, "The freedom of Jews was severely curtailed with anti-Jewish decrees. For example, Jews were forbidden to ride streetcars and even their own cars. They were allowed to shop only between 3 and 5 p.m. Jews were not allowed to sit in their gardens after 8 p.m. No admission to theater, movie halls, or swimming pools. All Jews were required to wear a yellow star for quick identification." As she poured out her frustrations about living under German occupation, she had little idea how even this restricted life would soon look like a luxury compared to what was ahead. Life turns upside down. Just a few weeks later, on 8th July 1942, she wrote, "It seems like years since last Sunday morning. So much has happened, as if the whole world had suddenly turned upside down." Indeed, the world had turned upside down for the Frank family. 3 days back, on Sunday afternoon, on 5th July 1942, the family had received a call-up from the German Security Service SS ordering Anne's elder sister, Margot, to report. As the Jews were routinely rounded up those days, everyone knew what the call-up meant. It meant imprisonment in a concentration camp and worse. But luckily, Her father had a plan. The next morning at 7:30, Anne's family quietly left their home and headed, in pouring rain, toward a secret hiding place, an annex, on the third floor of the office building where his father used to work. A few days later, Anne's family was joined by another Jewish family and one more gentleman. Together, the 8 persons started living in hiding to escape the capture by SS. The rules of the hiding were clear and stringent. No going out. Windows had to be covered with curtains all the time. Restricted hours for the use of toilets to avoid noise. Frequent blackouts. And never throwing out rubbish to avoid suspicion. Their lives depended on 6 helpers who were mainly her father's colleagues in business and worked in the office and warehouse in the same building downstairs. Heroically risking their own lives for helping Jews, these helpers supplied food, books, and even cakes on birthdays to the Secret Annex residents. After a few days, one of them even built a bookcase with hinges that covered the door to a narrow staircase to the Secret Annex. On 11th July 1942, days after going into the hiding, the reality had started sinking. As she wrote, "Not being able to go out upsets me more than I can say, and I am terrified our hiding place will be discovered and that we will be shot. That, of course, is a fairly dismal prospect." From July 1942, the time Anne Frank went into hiding with her family, until August 1944, for more than 2 years, she kept forensic account of her life, writing about fears, anxieties, hopes, war situation, conflict with her mother, disagreements among the inhabitants of the Secret Annex, portraits of the people she lived with, her romance with fellow occupant Peter, memories of her grandma, her thoughts about life and God. In all, she wrote in Dutch over 500 entries in her diary. Live war and fear of being caught. Sharing the grim reality of Holland at the time, on 19 November 1942, she told Kitty, "In the evenings when it is dark, I often see long lines of good innocent people, accompanied by crying children, walking on and on, ordered about by a handful of men who bully and beat them until they nearly drop. No one is spared. The sick, the elderly, children, babies, and pregnant women, all are marched to their death." On 26 July 1943, she shared how she felt during a bombing campaign nearby. "The house shook and the bombs kept falling. I was clutching my escape bag, more because I wanted to have something to hold on to than because I wanted to run away. I know we can't leave this place, but if we had to, being seen on the streets would be just as dangerous as getting caught in an air raid. I can assure you that when I went to bed at 9, my legs were still shaking. At the stroke of midnight, I woke up again. More planes. I stayed in father's bed until 1, in my own bed until 1:30, and was back in father's bed at 2. But the planes kept on coming. At last, they stopped firing, and I was able to go back to my bed again. I finally fell asleep at 2:30. She goes on to describe her ultimate nightmare in her entry on 8 November 1943. At night in bed, I see myself alone in a dungeon without father and mother. After living in hiding for almost 2 years, and seeing no prospect of freedom, on 3rd February 1944 she wrote, "I have reached the point where I hardly care whether I live or die. The world will keep on turning without me, and I can't do anything to change events anyway. I will just let matters take their course and concentrate on studying and hope that everything will be all right in the end." Unfortunately, the end was to come eventually, and a brutal one. The last entry. Her last entry was on 1st August 1944. 3 days later, all the 8 people hiding in the secret annex were found out in a surprise raid by the SS and deported to concentration camps. Anne Frank died of typhus in the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp in 1945, just short of her 16th birthday. Her mother and elder sister too died there. Her father, Otto Frank, however, survived the camps and was released in January 1945. When he finally returned to Amsterdam in June 1945, Miep Gies, one of the helpers who had protected the family, gave Otto the biggest surprise of his life, Anne's diary. After the arrest of the residents of the secret annex, Miep had found Anne's diary strewn on the floor, and she kept it safe all along until Otto returned. In candid conversations with Kitty, Anne Frank had expressed her interest to become a writer and publish her diary. Honoring her wishes, he published the book in 1946, first in Dutch, followed by the English edition in 1952. To date, the book, The Diary of a Young Girl, remains one of the classics. Do you have a true friend? Almost 80 years later, we too are living in a kind of isolation, fearful of getting ambushed by COVID-19, and along with all the anxieties of our own as well as the health of family, friends, relatives, jobs, money, and so on. In this situation, do you have a true friend to whom you can say everything? Yes, everything. Interestingly, on 20th June 1942, Anne told Kitty, "Paper has more patience than people." And on 24th December 1943, she told Kitty, "My writing has raised me somewhat from the depths of despair." Fortunately, we all have our own best friend anytime we need her. But unfortunately, most of us don't know the therapeutic benefits of truthfully and fearlessly confiding in a diary. Thanks for listening.